Well, hello and welcome to The Point. My name's David Flavel and I'm the Minister here, and it's great to welcome you whether you're watching at home on YouTube or whether you're live at home on Zoom. We're glad to have you here, and if you're not yet a Christian, our church is designed for you. We try to make it as easy and accessible to understand as possible so that you can find out more about who Jesus is. At the moment, we're going through a series on Galatians. We're nearly coming to the end, and Galatians is a book in the Bible written by Paul, one of the earliest Christians, and it talks about what it is to be free. If you want to see the previous talks, then you can go to our website www.thepoint.life. But for today, let's have a look at the last chapter of Galatians, the first half of it, Galatians chapter 6. Last week, Paul contrasted living in the Spirit, that is living in God's way, and living in the flesh, living in the way that people do. And now he continues with some advice and some ideas. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, that's something they've done wrong, something bad, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted. So don't condemn people, try to bring them back, and do it gently and lovingly. And watch out that you might fall too. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. That's a very well-known biblical quote in church circles. You may have heard of it before. And what it's about is that we share with one another the burdens of life. And it's a really good saying, and it's a really good sort of idea that we're not alone. And especially at this time of lockdown, we can carry each other's burdens. We can work together to share. We might say in a modern idiom, a trouble shared is a trouble halved. And there's that sort of element in what Paul's saying here. And that you can do this when you fulfill the law of Christ, when you do things Jesus' way, you will support one another. But there's a warning. If anyone thinks they are something when they are not, they deceive themselves. So don't get ideas above your station, don't get too high, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought. Each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else, for each one should carry their own load, which is an interesting contrast to carry each other's burdens. And what Paul's saying here is, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought. Look at yourself, test yourself, and don't compare yourselves to other people. Don't look at other people and say, well, they're much better Christians than me, or they're much worse Christians than me. Instead, don't compare yourselves to other people. Test your own actions and humble yourself before God. Nevertheless, the one who receives instruction in the word should share all good things with their instructor. And again, there's a sort of idea of a phrase, an idea, a saying here that's helpful. And what this is about is when you have a teacher, that you should care for that teacher and want to grow together and know together and learn together. So if you come up with some good ideas or you hear something, then share it with your teacher. Paul's list of helpful sayings is being given to a church he has had to be very firm with. He's had to be strong with them because of the way they've been deceived. But now he's encouraging them and helping them to understand what Jesus wants of them. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. And Paul's writing in the context where he's been firm with the Galatians and he's talked to them about the people who've been leading them astray, and I think he's aiming at them at this point. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. I think Paul's implying here that his way, the way that he's suggesting they should go, leads to eternal life, and the way that the other people, the ones who are leading the Galatians astray, the ones who are getting to obey the law, that will lead to destruction, as he compares the flesh and the Spirit. But let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. I wonder whether the Galatians were getting tired of doing good. I wonder if they got to the stage where they were saying, well, you know what? If the law isn't important, as Paul says, then we may as well not bother, and it doesn't really matter what we do, and we can just live lives and do whatever we want. And Paul's pointing out in this passage that actually, no, it does matter what you do, and don't become weary in doing the right thing. Keep on to the end, and let's do good to all people, especially to those who are of the household of faith, it says in the old version, belong to the family of believers, those who are our fellow Christians. I wonder what those Galatian Christians felt when they received Paul's letter. In the Bible, in the Acts of the Apostles, we read about the people of Berea. And Berea is a place in northern Macedonia, now Greece, and it says in the Bible that the Bereans were more noble. Wouldn't that be great to be known throughout history as people who were more noble? Whereas the Galatians, Paul, earlier in the book, calls them foolish Galatians. So he's had a real go at them. But now he's given them some instruction and he's being a lot more kind. But whose fault is it that these people have gone wrong? Is it their fault for being ready to listen to others? Is it Paul's fault for not teaching them well enough? Maybe he's feeling a bit annoyed at himself, that maybe if he taught them better, they would have listened more. Who knows? Or maybe it's the fault of those who are wanting to change them and make them obey the law. Which brings me to my question. How much is it true that you reap what you sow? After all, Paul had sowed seeds of the true message. He told people the gospel of Jesus. He'd explained to them. And yet the Galatians had gone terribly wrong. So how much is it true that you reap what you sow? And how much is it not? So what we'll do is we'll get you into groups. If you're watching live on Zoom, then I will divide you into groups just now. And you can look at that question. If you've got a better question from the passage then, or anything else, then please do bring that. If you're watching at home on YouTube, then just put the video on pause and have a look for yourself, and we'll get back to you in a little bit. Well, that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching. Next week we'll have the final part of Galatians. But until then, let me give you my takeaways for this week. So what must we do? Well, as Paul writes, let us do good to all people. Now, with our hindsight as Christians, we can see, oh yes, the church does do good for all people, and the church has been involved in setting up hospitals, involved in schooling, involved in all kinds of things. Samaritans were started by a clergyman, all sorts of things we expect the church to be involved in. But without hindsight, this is actually an incredibly bold vision for a tiny minority of people in the province of Galatia. Paul is calling them to look after others, to care for their neighbours. And in fact, the Christian church in its first 300 years of life, before the Emperor Constantine became a Christian, grew and transformed the empire because it outprayed the pagans, it outthought the pagans, but most importantly, it outcared the pagans, because it didn't just care for its own, it also cared for their own. So let us do good to all people was an amazing vision for those people and change the entire empire. So that's our task this week. Let us do good to all people, not those who are far away, because we're not allowed to go and see them, but our nearest neighbours. What can we do good to them this week?